The dress uniform was immaculately pressed, yet across the dark fabric of his left breast sat 5 faded, rectangular shadows where heavy military honors should have been. Up the vast alloy ramp of the Ethelgard spire, Jackson Thorne walked alone. Those missing decorations, the silent assembly noted immediately. 600 Ethelgardian nobles lined the ascent, their silver skin gleaming under the ambient luminescence. Not a single spectator shifted their weight. Absolute, immortal stillness greeted the first human matrimonial candidate. Seeing one of the short-lived mortals in the flesh was a different matter entirely. Jackson stopped. He adjusted his left cuff. A sharp knuckle crack echoed. Before him sat the dynasts of Ethelgard. Princess Talia observed him with cold, calculating geometry. To her right, the scholarly Mira catalogued his gait, while the blunt Celine gripped her armrests with bored irritation. An aesthetic display of cultural worth they demanded. Poetry woven into movement they expected. What happened next? I wish I could say it ended there. Stay close. The resonance trial began without a spoken command. From the polished floor rose a pedestal, bearing a jagged, translucent choir stone. By ancient tradition, a worthy suitor's touch would coax a harmonic frequency from the crystal. The resulting sound would broadcast the depth of their soul to the court. Jackson placed his bare hand against the cold facet. Silence stretched. Microscopic, unblinking glances the nobles exchanged. To the Ethelgardians, the stone remained utterly dead. Beneath the crystal, however, a hidden pulse beat against his palm. A violent, erratic thrumming. It mirrored a heart pushed past the brink of exhaustion. He was suppressing a massive weight, locking it down tight within his own mind. Leaving the court unimpressed by his apparent spiritual void, he withdrew his palm. Next came the lineage trial. Princess Mira gestured toward an archaic acoustic basin. From her throat poured a melodic, elongated recitation of her ancestry. 9,000 uninterrupted years of artistic and philosophical triumphs, she detailed. The reverberations painted a masterpiece of unbroken societal stability. Jackson stepped to the basin. His voice carried the clipped, pragmatic cadence of the outer shipyards. 4 generations. That was all he could reliably recite before the planetary records dissolved into orbital bombardments and colony collapses. Barely a century of documented existence. My great-grandfather cultivated algae, Jackson stated, the acoustics amplifying his flat tone. During a 14-week transit delay, my grandfather survived the flooded valley sector. Atmospheric scrubbers, my father rebuilt. We did not record our history during those years, because paper burns too easily in a breached hull. By a fraction of a millimeter, Talia's perfect posture fractured. A 14-week environmental collapse would represent a multi-generational catastrophe for her people, requiring centuries of mourning and architectural redesign. With the emotional weight of a misplaced stylus, he had reported the tragedy. Through the silver-skinned ranks, whispers finally rippled. The sound resembled dry leaves sliding over steel. This candidate lacked spiritual resonance and possessed the lineage of a fleeting insect. To salvage the failing diplomatic bridge, only the blade dance remained. A choreographed display of martial philosophy, the final test demanded. Jackson simply unbuttoned his collar. Jackson drew a ceremonial practice blade. The traditional 7-fingered grips he ignored entirely, opting instead for a crude, 2-handed hold. Across the sparring floor he moved. No sweeping arcs. No aesthetic intention whatsoever. Just brutal, mechanical strikes meant to terminate a theoretical threat in the minimum required seconds. Princess Talia's eyes narrowed, her blinking sequence halting completely. To the eternal court, this lack of poetry confirmed a soulless, primitive nature. They believed humans simply lacked the evolutionary capacity for art. Buried beneath orbital bombardments, the truth was far heavier. That evening, crystal chandeliers cast fractured light across the vast banquet hall. The scent of spiced ozone and roasted flora drifted from the serving platters, filling the vaulted space. Jackson sat quietly at the periphery. He lifted a crystalline water goblet. Against his thumb, Cool condensation beaded and slid downward in a slow, erratic path. He took a measured, quiet sip. From the head table, Talia stood. Her voice cut through the ambient chime of silverware. "Candidate Thorn," she began, the syllables ringing like struck glass. "Your lifespan is a flicker. Your history is unrecorded. Your combat is devoid of grace. What could a dying spark possibly offer an eternal empire?" The following morning, the Great Hall demanded an answer. 300 dynasts waited in the amphitheater. Into the center of the silent floor stepped Jackson. He did not wear a practice weapon. From his back, he unlashed a heavy sheath crafted from scarred dropship plating. Out slid the iron ledger. Against the pristine floor tiles, the dark, notched blade cried out, a harsh, metallic shriek. Every silver-skinned noble visibly winced at the auditory violence. Into the blackened metal, thousands of jagged, overlapping names had been hastily etched by frantic hands. The record of a thing and the thing itself are not the same. Jackson projected into the cavernous space. "You have the stone. We have the struggle." He ran a thumb over a deep scratch near the hilt. "We don't spend our time bearing the end. We spend it making things that will outlast us." At Kalen, 7, a 19-year-old comms officer named Elias had exactly 3 minutes of oxygen remaining. A distress signal he did not send. Instead, he used his combat knife to carve his infant daughter's name into a titanium bulkhead. He raised the heavy weapon, the metal catching the hall's luminescence. "This is our concentrated history. We are the people who do not drop the heavy thing, no matter who is watching." Absolute silence followed. The Ethel Guardians finally processed the brutal efficiency of his earlier movements. It was not a lack of culture. It was the rigid architecture of survival. A burgeoning, terrified respect replaced their previous boredom. The diplomatic bridge would not fail. Humanity would not be dismissed as a cosmic nuisance. They were now recognized as a species forged entirely in the dark. Above the planetary terminator line, the observation deck offered an unobstructed view of the sprawling Ethelgard spire. Starlight caught the edges of the alloy framing. Talia stepped out of the pneumatic lift. She did not wear her towering ceremonial headdress. Beside him she stopped. "Kalen, 7, Talia murmured, the syllables completely lacking her usual melodic elongation. Jackson looked at the dark pane of glass. His left hand gripped the cold metal railing. A sharp knuckle crack echoed in the empty room. The heavy sheath remained strapped across his back. He kept his gaze fixed on the distant stars.